Hello, welcome. Today we'll be talking about what I've learnt in the past year since obtaining my private pilot's license. And I'll be turning those into tips and tricks that you can take home with you and implement into your own flying. Hello, welcome to another Fly with Marco video. I hope you're well. Today we'll be discussing what I've learned over the past year since obtaining my private pilot's license. I'll also be turning these into some tips and tricks that you can implement into your own flying, and it will give you something to think about. Thank you to those who have subscribed to the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. And if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to do so. So I passed my skills test in November 2019. I got my license in the post the following month, December 2019. Since then, I've flown just over 50 hours, that's as a P1, which isn't too bad, I suppose, considering we've had 2 lockdowns. And also the aircraft which I have a share in has been offline for a little while too. I would have liked to have done a few more hours, but obviously it's been a difficult year for us all. Hopefully in 2021, I'll be able to get out a bit more. Okay, so the first thing that I've learnt over the past year is don't force a flight. And for other pilots, I'm sure you can resonate with me here. And what I mean by this is when you turn up to the airfield, you plan to go wherever you plan to go, don't force that flight. If something is not right, you can always delay that flight. There's a common aviation phrase: you'd much rather be on the ground wishing you were in the air than being in the air wishing that you were on the ground. Don't be afraid to cancel or postpone the flight if the weather is beyond your personal limits. For example, you could say, right, well, my personal limit is I don't go out in a 20 knots or above crosswind. So if the weather is at that or above, you know straight away you can cancel your flight and you don't really have to think too much about it. So set your personal limits and make sure you stick to them. I remember going to the airfield with a good friend of mine. We didn't actually fly first time round, the weather wasn't good enough, so we went back the second time. But really, should we have flown that day? Well, I felt okay flying that day, but my friend, it was his first experience in the light aircraft. And we had crosswinds of about 12, 13, 14 knots, which isn't the most pleasant experience when coming to land on final. So another slight tip following on from this point is to know your audience. You know, if someone's flying in the light aircraft for the very first time, make sure it's a very lovely day and they're gonna enjoy that experience rather than be somewhat scared. Okay, the second point, really important one, is have a plan B. In other words, be flexible. As you know, things change in aviation, mainly the weather. So, for example, I was flying back from Leicester over the summer and I'd planned to fly to the west of the Doncaster-Sheffield zone and skirt up that way back to Sherburn. But as I got a bit closer, I realised the weather wasn't good enough. It wouldn't really allow me to go west. So I thought, okay, what's my plan B? Well, my plan B is to actually go via the east routes. So we're going to navigate to the east towards Humberside, and then once we've actually passed that area of bad weather, we can cut back in and head towards Sherburn. So we'll always have a plan B. Things do change and you're going to have to be flexible. Could also be something like you're already flying, you're near to where you want to land, but for whatever reason you can't actually land at that airfield. Maybe something's happened on the runway, maybe you actually can't make communication with them, in which case you may want to have a backup airfield that you can land at and essentially be flexible and make sure you have that plan B in your pocket. Third tip, and this is probably the most important one, I should have made it number 1, practice your emergency procedures and keep current in these procedures. Once you've passed your PPL's test, you know, your learning doesn't stop then. So every month I make a habit of going over my emergency procedures checklists. You don't even have to be in the aircraft, you can do it right here. You can close your eyes, you can simulate one of these events and go through the checklist in your mind and make sure you've got everything right. Obviously, there's always ways you can improve. You may have missed out a couple of steps, or you may have actually, done some steps in a reverse order. So go through your practice, see what you can do better next time. And if you do practice these every month, you'll be so much better and you won't have to think about it, you know, if and when that eventuality actually happen. You know, run through engine failures after takeoff, do lots of practice forced landings, practice your mayday calls, and the more you practice, the more instinctive it'll actually become. Okay, so point number 4, which follows nicely on, is to continue learning, and I think this is a really important concept to grasp. Just because you've passed your private pilot's skills test and your exams and you've got your license doesn't mean that you should stop learning now you've got the authority to fly and do what you want. It's a complete contrary. You've only really just entered the whole realm of aviation. Therefore, learn from other pilots and think about doing further ratings. You know, it could be something like a night rating, or really important, an instrument rating of some kind, just so when you experience that somewhat borderline weather, you have a lot more confidence in your ability. Have an open mindset and keep learning. I think this attitude is really important in all areas of life, but especially important in aviation. And I think one thing that I've learned just through listening to people, watching videos, is it's really good to get your instrument rating, and I'm starting to work towards mine now. But I think if you're equipped with that instrument rating, you can really have a lot more confidence in your flying and get yourself out of situations that you may actually find yourself in. For example, let's just say you've departed a VFR, it's a really nice day, but you've covered 200 nautical miles and you've gone to a place where there's a weather front coming in. Well, it'll give you a bit more confidence and a few more options if you have some form of instrument rating. Lastly, the thing that I've noticed in the past year, and the 5th thing, is you become a weather whiz. You really know a lot about the weather. Obviously, the weather is one of the things that we think about when we're in our planning phase. I know some people that, okay, the weather's great today, where do we want to go? And that's actually the driving force to get out and go flying. So by actually keeping a close eye on the forecast, and by looking outside every day, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together and you understand the weather a lot better. And I don't know where you are, but here in the UK, the weather's generally pretty poor. So when it is a very nice day, you're much more appreciative of the weather outside. Now you can check the weather on several different apps and websites, and use 3 or 4 or even maybe 2 systems together to have a good idea of what the weather is going to be like for your flight. Don't just look at one system. I'd probably put a couple together and then make a judgment from that. Of course, forecast is a forecast. It's not actually what the weather is going to be, so take that into account as well. I'll share a couple that I use that can maybe help you. So Windy's really, really good. I found that you can actually type in the airfield code and it will tell you the exact weather at that airfield. Again, it's a forecast, but it's a very good, I found from my experience, the forecast is highly reliable in the short term. I also use SkyDemon. Again, they've got the weather that links into SkyDemon. I'm not sure how it's fed through and what systems they use. It could be the Met Office, I really don't know. But again, that's one indication of the weather on when you're planning your routes. A nice visual depiction as well. And you could also use something like Google just to sense check the overall weather in that general location. What's it going to be like in that particular day? What do you call it when a giraffe swallows a Cessna 172? A plane in the neck. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've got value from this video and can maybe resonate with a few of these things that I've noticed over the past year. And if there's any that you think you've come across that you'd like to share, and please do pop it in the comments, and maybe I could do another video on that particular element. So thanks very much for watching. Keep safe and happy flying.